here we go again. This time we're going to get into camera tracking with After Effects. I have a project set up for you to follow along with and experiment outside of the couple of runs that I take you through on this thing. What you're going to see in here is a folder with green screen footage just to help you think about potential elements that you can put into a track. There's a solved folder which has one shot that I have here of this HD footage that we're using for tracking examples. One of them solved, because solving can take some time, and if you just want to jump in to something and see it, that would be a good place for you to go. And then I have a folder of this footage that we're going to use, and I want to start off with a couple of technicalities that camera tracking is really specific about. And the first thing is that footage that you're going to track camera work with has to be at its native size. So often I see students make a composition, or they already had a composition open. I have a composition here called Camera Track 2, but it might be a different size in the footage, and so the footage is then stretched to grow, or sized down to fit. And sometimes students just, when they're moving things around, accidentally distort the image a little bit by grabbing a handle. If an image or if a piece of footage is not at its native size, you'll get an error and you won't be able to do any tracking. So a good way to make sure that you get a composition that is set up per your footage attributes, you would just drag that footage onto the composition icon, and you'll get a composition that is that size, that duration, etc. I'm not going to worry about doing that right now, because deleting it, because I just want to use the comp that I have created, and I made sure that all of this footage was the right size, so we won't have that problem. But in case you do a different route, which you probably will when you're doing your own assignment, just keep that in mind. If you have an error and you're like, why isn't this working? It's a good chance you just have footage that's been stretched or resized. So I'm going to take that girl walking in the woods and drop it into my Camera Track 2 composition timeline. And here we see this girl again. We're not going to do crazy panda mask this time, because we're going to talk about a different kind of tracking. So turn that speaker off. I don't think there is any audio, but it's just one less thing your computer would have to worry about if you turn audio off on footage that you have, so you'll perform a little bit better. The path to get to the camera tracker is similar to the motion tracker that we're doing. If you have access to the panel for tracking, you can see a button called Track Camera, or you can go to Animation and choose Track Camera here. Pick your poison, and instantly what happens is After Effects takes a look at every frame of your footage, and that's kind of why I wanted to do just this 10-second one, because I think this clip is I don't know, more like 20, and it just takes a little bit longer, and we're just doing this for education's sake. So it's analyzing the footage, and you can see that there's a little info area up here in the effect controls panel that's saying that you're at 35% and currently rendering or analyzing frame 200 something of 494, and then it also just tells you like how much longer is this going to take. I have quite a bit of RAM in this computer. I'm not maxed out, but I've got like 40 some gigs of RAM, which is pretty good. I want to get to 64, but if you're working on a laptop and you don't have a screamer, this can take a little while. So it might be one of those things where you go get a cup of coffee and come back and see what happened. And don't feel like you're never going to have a mistake in here, because it's quite common to try to analyze footage that might be moving too fast, or isn't in focus, or like I was talking about in a previous video, maybe too dark, too much noise going on. So it finished analyzing all of the frames, and now what it's doing is it's solving the camera, and it's done. The result here is a whole bunch of tiny little colored crosshairs, and these are points that After Effects has identified as like points of interest or good points of contrast, shapes and patterns, things that it's not too far from what we were doing with motion tracking, where we were identifying the little area that we needed to have After Effects follow in the frame. But it does it through every frame. So if I were to scrub through this here, you can see that those little colored dots are moving, and they're like glued onto trees, or sort of glued onto the ground. And sometimes they disappear, and sometimes they pop up, because it's finding a relationship between 3 points. So it triangulates this information that it found, and is looking for a way to identify the movement of the camera and potential surfaces and planes of interest that you might want to work with. So I'll go anywhere. I'll just stop somewhere in the middle here. If I start to mouse around without clicking, I'm just sort of hovering, you start to see that there are these targets. Looks like a bullseye or something, and that target is made of 3 points, and you should be able to see that it's like picking a perspective plane. Sometimes it's like on the ground, sometimes it thinks that it found something on the trees that's like a flat surface. Maybe it won't pick anything on her because she's a moving subject. So it's really good at identifying parts of the actual background or environment. So like for this one, for example, I'm gonna take this guy and I'm gonna click on it once, and it shows you the 3 points. So it says, all right, well, I found a relationship between these points. I think I understand the environment. I think I know what the camera is doing here. And now this is when we have to actually execute and finish the track in order to apply it to a 3D camera and another object. And so if I right click or control click on that little area there, boop, here are my options. I get create text in a camera, create a solid in a camera, a null in a camera, a shadow catcher, this is cool, camera and light, or 3 text layers in a camera, and so on. So you've got quite a bit of options as far as how you can toss in something at this point. And what I just want to do right off the bat is just do text in a camera. We'll start at the top and kind of look what our options are. So here's my text, and it threw it in as I would expect, because this looks like a ground plane. So it's going to be sort of flat to the ground. It's also very large and goes off screen. But if I cruise through time, you can see that it goes, yeah, I believe that those points of interest that you had there were part of the ground, and it moves in according to the parallax move, where it's greater movement at the beginning and then it starts to slow down a little bit just because it's getting into the distance. But it feels like it's definitely locked in to this part of the world. Now, since I had that target and it was flat, my text is flat, but there should be no problem, having understood the world of 3-dimensional objects, to select that layer and maybe readjust its orientation. I can do all kinds of things. I could like make it go like this, and that could be kind of cool. I can access the character information, change the font, change the color, change its size, you know, just like you can with anything. So now this actually feels a little bit better because it's not in front of her, which is awkward, and she gets to kind of like walk right by it. So this is only possible because of the analysis that After Effects did and applying it to a camera. So the text is not moving. The text is stationary, and it is the camera that is moving. So if I access the used keyframes for that camera, you can see that every frame for position has a keyframe, and every frame in orientation, which is the rotation of X, Y, and Z, also has a keyframe. So it's this camera that is giving us the illusion that that text layer is actually in this environment. It's super cool. Like the first time you do this, it's really exciting. I've done this a lot of times and it's still exciting. It's just really neat. Like to be able to get your hands into an environment in post is really, really sweet. So now this, if I turn off her video layer, it's going to behave just the same. And that's actually a really cool cheat, and I'll talk about that in a different video, but you can use your phone and get some really cool camera moves and then record that, or analyze it and create a camera based off of what you had done with your phone, and then you've got a cool handheld shot that maybe is going up and inspecting something. It's really clever. So this being just a layer in 3D space doesn't stop me from doing things like duplicating it. Let's swivel you back around this way and then move you way back somewhere further down the path. Lift you up. Maybe tilt you just a little bit. We'll see. So there's something that's even further in the distance, and it behaves just like you would expect, with the camera. Now it's paper thin, but it's really a great way for you to move fast and speedy like without having to do that process over again. That one looks a little tweaked, and then you can see that she gets in behind that text, so I would have to either end that shot early or do some really clever masking or something, which I'm not in the mood to do right now. So she's now in this corridor of text, literally. But if I'm trying to come up with a creative application for this, I could think about a title sequence for a film or TV show, or a poem or a haiku, different call-outs of a song if I'm doing a music video or something like that. So that's just using the text. The tricky part now is getting back to the little pieces of tracked information, and the only way to access that is by clicking on your layer that is the footage that you analyzed and going to your effects control panel and clicking on the effect, and that will bring back up your little colored dots. That's one thing I get a lot from students saying, like, I don't know what happened, I had the dots and then they're gone. It's just because you clicked on a different layer and moved on to something else. So you just have to make sure that you are familiar with that process of selecting that layer, going and showing your effects control panel and selecting that camera tracker. So just in the tracker itself, you could reset it and it would start all over again. But there's no reason to do that because we had a successful track. I'll turn my phone off again. So you have a shot type this is a fixed angle of view, because we are not doing any sort of zoom work. You know, we're not messing with the lens and zooming in or out. Please don't ever do that. That's just bad filmmaking, usually. But if you did, you could tell it that, yeah, we're actually doing a variable zoom, and it'll keep that in mind and sort of analyze things differently. But usually everything that we track is going to be fixed angle of view. So the show track points, you can, well, just leave that in 3D Solve. You can render out your track points if you wanted to, so that they are burned into the footage just for whatever reason. You really wouldn't want to do that. You can change your track point size and your target size here. Sometimes you get them and they're really tiny, super small. I think we'll actually visit some footage where that happens. You do have the advanced method where you're doing auto detect, and you just want to leave that on there. You really don't want to mess with any of this stuff. This is just too heavy, which is code for I don't even know. I never touch it. I never have to. But what if now I wanted to put something else in this world and not just text? How do you do that? Well, I would just get rid of my text, which I'll just delete. I need to go back to my footage and my camera tracker and find another, target. So maybe I want to put something like in front of this tree. This looks like it's pretty well associated with the tree, a little flat plane, so I could put like a no trespassing sign or something, or I can get a little more creative. So now if I right click on this, it doesn't allow me to say that I want to put a camera in, because we've already dropped the camera in. The camera is all set up with the keyframes, so it doesn't matter anymore. So now I can just jump to specific things. So I'll just say, let's create a solid. And now here's this solid that is stuck to the tree, but it's also, in front of her. But I'm going to show you a way to get objects into your scene without having to do too much futzing. So this solid is now in a 3D space. If I hit, position, it tells me that what my coordinates are, X, Y, and Z. But maybe I want to replace it with like someone who I have green screened, like this attractive man making a selfie. I didn't film this. This is all stock. But if I want to replace this solid with some footage or an image or something like that, all I have to do is make sure that the layer in the timeline is selected, so it's highlighted. I'm going to go up to the footage that I want. I'm going to start dragging it, and in mid-drag, before I let go, I have to press Option. And I'm going to drop it right on top of that other solid, and it replaces it and keeps all of its attributes. Even if it was animated, it would just replace what it was there, and all the animation and keyframes would all still be in place. So it's really handy. So now I just need to get rid of that green screen, so I'll go to Keying, Key Light, select my green, and it's basically gone. I could do probably a better key than that, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. And now there's a dude standing in the world taking a selfie of himself, ignoring the cute little girl with the Christmas tree. But like, it's pretty awesome. Now, before we get too excited about it, I'd want to do a quick render and really have a look to see what the results are. And what I can tell is that his feet are slipping. So see how there's a drift going on? This is an issue with most likely the Y, the height of this. So I could just give a quick test and pop him up a little bit. Maybe I'll even put him a little more over here. I could change his scale, but I'm not going to do that just yet. Definitely still slipping. So if it was up high, maybe he needs to come down more. Nope, definitely not. So it's a height issue. it's a height issue, or it's just also a distance. I could try to shove him further back because he's moving as if he was further away. So I probably had to bring him forward. So this is when it gets really tricky, because you're trying to use these little arrows and stuff. Oh my god, he's so giant. I can scale him down. Come on, guy. Scale you down a little bit. You are an adult, so you're going to be a little bit bigger. And then I have to spin you back so you're kind of facing over here. Definitely see a halo around him. That's better. So I had to pull him forward. He was back a little bit too far for it to move with the proper parallax. So now the world, still got a little bit of a slip. I might have brought him too close. So it's one of those things, you gotta have your eyes on it. You gotta be quite picky about your results, because you want it to be believable. You don't want to show any sort of mistakes or things that aren't real, otherwise your audience will see it and it'll bug them. So that is a real easy way for you to get something in there, just by using the solid replacement method. This could be a 3D file, it could be a logo, or a drawing, a shadow or something like that, some creepy little thing, and maybe you're trying to turn this into like a sort of a nightmare scenario. Put the creepy panda face back on her. But like, I would then try to color correct this so that it actually felt like we were in the right world. He's super saturated and could use a little less contrast, so I would probably hit up, I can do this quickly just with two guys. I can go to hue and saturation and just take the saturation down a bit, and then I'll do like levels or curves, but I like levels. So I need to reduce the white point a little bit, and then maybe even neutralize some of those blacks, just to get them to feel a little more muted. And then I would want to take my key light keying and try to get rid of a little bit of that halo in there, and fix that up, or maybe use like a matte choker or something like that. But so he feels like he actually is in that space now, feels a little bit more color appropriate per her skin tones and stuff like that. And he's just a big nerd out there just taking a selfie of himself in the woods. He definitely did not dress for this occasion. Alright, so I'm going to stop there. I want you to experiment with this one, and try using different points, put in some text, put in a solid, see if you can put some of the green screen stuff in there. I've got the same guy on the phone, a little girl opening up a present. I have a creepy clown who's walking, so you have to make sure that clown is animated in Z-space moving forward, otherwise he'll just be moonwalking. I do have Spider-Man and Thanos doing the Gangnam Style dance, and then and a dog. A dog. Oh, I should just replace the guy with the dog right now. Boop. It's a big dog. Yeah, that's a big dog. Hey, buddy. It's interesting too. You can see through them, so I'd have to rekey it. Anyways, I want you to play with this, and then we'll move on to a little more elaborate and technical camera tracking with different shots, different elements. So hope you enjoy this. It's kind of fun.